Well, another very warm welcome back, all my YouTube browsers and subscribers. And if you're a brand new subscriber to my channel, I do hope you find something in here to entertain you with regards looking at these old vintage race bikes. Now, coming up in my next video, as promised, we're going to take a look at another fantastic looking machine from the Terry Pickering vintage dirt bike collection. And this time round, we're going to take a look at this fully restored 1978 250CR Husqvarna. So without any further delay, let's just jump straight into this video. Now, this particular 250 Husqvarna is not an original machine from 1978, but this is another bike that was put together using the mountains of old dirt bike parts from Terry Pickering's spare parts warehouse. Now, over the years, Terry has amassed a comprehensive collection of not only classic dirt bikes, but many valuable bike parts as well, and this lovely looking machine is just one of the end products of many of these refurbished bike spares. Now, the bike is more or less a fully restored 1978 Husqvarna, and as far as I'm aware, all of the parts that were used to build the bike are period correct and from that 1978 year. Although I'm sure that many of my eagle-eyed YouTubers will still find some kind of nut or bolt on this bike that's not from 1978. Now, although Terry supplied all the bits and pieces to put the bike together, the actual refurbishment of the parts and the building of the bike was done by Terry's master bike builder friend Keith Ree. Now, back in the day, Keith used to ride for Michael, and he was also a works rider for Kramer, so it's pretty safe to say that Keith knows his way around these kind of old Twinshock race bikes. But I'm sure you don't need me to tell you just how good these 250 Husky engines were back in the day, and even in these modern times these are still very competitive when they're raced at classic and Twinshock scrambles events. Now, the motor was a 2-stroke single cylinder with a 6-speed gearbox and your standard wet multi-plate clutch, and the fuel was normally fed through a 38mm Mikuni carburetor and a reed valve block. Now, once again, the engine also had quite a modern CDI electronic ignition unit, and as I recall, I think these had a bore of about 69mm and a stroke of about 64mm. Now, these bikes also had a foam air filter as well, which of course could be easily removed, cleaned and then re-oiled before being put back into its housing. But these 250 Huskies had one of the lightest chassis of its day, with its quite light gauge tubular steel frame, and if I remember correctly, the full up weight of this bike with a full tank of fuel only weighed in at around 230 pounds, which it wasn't too bad for a 250 from 1978. Now, the bike's front forks were of course Husqvarna's own suspension units, which were your standard oil-filled spring type affairs, which gave around 9 inches of travel at the front. Now, these forks had quite a good reputation for function and reliability, and many riders tended to replace the fork leg caps by fitting caps with Schrader valves on the top so that they could add or remove low pressure air just to help with rebound and damping. But yet again, drum brakes for 1978, and as I remember, these had magnesium backplates just to help keep the overall weight down on what was still relatively a light little motorcycle. But again, more magnesium used here on the rear brake, which had decent stopping power for an older drum brake system, and the relatively light weight of the bike certainly helped those brakes to slow the machine down if you needed to make a turn or a quick stop. Now, as you'd expect, because this is not an original 1978 Husqvarna bike, these rear shocks are not the old girlings that would have been fitted back in the day, and I'm not entirely sure as to who actually makes this particular brand, but they do have that 1970s look about them, and they certainly don't look out of place on this particular 250. And I'm sure that the original bikes had a pair of dual rate springs on either shock, and by all accounts they worked very well as long as the tracks weren't too rough. Now, once again, Husqvarna's trademark fuel tank, which is of course instantly recognisable the world over, and when you see one of these older twin-shock Huskies on a racetrack, you certainly can't mistake it for any other make of motorcycle. And I think these fuel tanks held just over 2 gallons of gas, which was usually more than enough for even the longest race moto. Now, these 250 CRs had one of the comfiest seats in motocross at the time, and this was quite a nice place to lay your backside down on between the bumps. Now, the bike's exhaust expansion chamber is actually a new old stock part that Terry had in his spare parts vault, and with a bit of a freshen up, it certainly looks brand new once again. And the tailpipe also, as far as I'm aware, is the period correct part for the bike, and of course these kind of pieces all add towards keeping the bike correct for 1978. Now, the bike's builder, Keith Ree, has taken the time to fit the new machine with brand new control cables, Magura levers, and of course period correct handlebars. And again, Keith has gone for a quality Swedish made Gunnar Gasser throttle assembly and a nice pair of Magura lever covers. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm sure that these Husqvarnas used magnesium in these top and bottom fork yokes, although of course I've been known to be wrong before in the past, so please don't quote me on that particular statement. But you have to say it's quite good to see these old Swedish workhorses in this kind of condition once again and brought back to life. And of course it's got to surely be good for future generations to enjoy, whether it's just seeing these bikes race on a racetrack or just taking a look at them at shows or private collections. But for me personally, I don't really care if the bike's not original at all, because original bikes, as you know, are getting harder and harder to find these days, and you have to just take your hat off to the likes of Terry and Keith, who have went and saved another cracking old vintage motorcycle from being just another pile of rusty bike parts. And of course this is just one of the fantastic machines that we are soon to feature on my YouTube channel, so I do hope you'll return to see more of these race bikes from the Terry Pickering Classic Dirt Bike Collection. Well, I do hope you enjoyed that quite brief look around Terry's quite nice 250CR Husqvarna. Now, of course, not an original bike from 1978, but nonetheless a very well put together machine by the very talented hands of Keith Ree. Okay, in my next video posting we're going to continue with race bikes from Terry's collection, and in this next video we'll be taking a look at this beautiful 400 Micro twin shocker. And this is just another one of the many bikes that Terry has in his collection, so we'll take a look at this lovely looking Micro in my next video posting. But don't forget, if you like what you see here on my channel, then please hit that like button, or better still, just subscribe to my channel, because that way every time I upload a brand new video you'll be notified immediately and you won't miss out on future videos that I post here on my channel. So until the next time, everybody continue to be safe and well, and I'm sure we'll all get together later on and talk more about these vintage racers right here on your favourite classic dirt bike TV channel.